Once again, on behalf of AGN, the Assyrian Global Network, and Nabi Fry Fund for Culture, we are very excited today to bring to you another author or writer by the name of Julius Mirza. Today we are with Julius in Turlock, California, and we're very excited to learn more about him, his family, through the book that he has written called The Assyrian Dream, The Mirza Family Story. So welcome, Jay, as you are known by your friends and family. I'll call you Jay for today. Welcome to our program.
Thank you very much. I am appreciative of the fact that you took the time to come all the way from the Bay Area to Turlock to photograph me and to talk about my book. It's been a very interesting time how I arrived at writing this book. And it all basically started in San Francisco. It was Lisa's 40th birthday, my daughter, and we had a nice lunch. And afterwards, she takes this bag of hers and gives me all this information. And she says, "Dad, we know who you are, but we don't know anything about you." This shocked me. And I said, well, something has to be done about this. I felt guilty. And so I said, okay, I'll see what I can do. And then she pulls out the schedule of when the book should be written. At the end, she gave me 8 months to write this book. I said, I think that's a little on the premature side. So I told her it'll take at least 1.5 to 2 years to get this. Oh, she said, well, that's good, that's progress.
Okay, good.
So she was positive as far as that goes. So the reason why I'm in America is because what my parents wanted me to be. They wanted us educated and go to school. And after the Second World War, there was a lot of damage to schools overseas, such as Alexandria, Egypt, Beirut, Lebanon, Cairo, Egypt, and maybe even in Turkey. So my dad had to find a way to get us educated, because having gone to the American Presbyterian mission schools, they recognized that there was more to education than just reading and writing and using the quill pen to do the Islamic writings. So it happened that he knew a friend in the oil company. He was working for the oil company then, was from India. So he asked them, is there a good school where my children can go to be educated? Oh yeah, he said, there's a St. Paul's school in Darjeeling. It has a very good reputation. In fact, my son goes there. If you like, I'll give you the name and address of the principal, and you can contact him. And so, knowing my father, he went home and right away put his thoughts together in this letter and sent a letter to Leslie Goddard, who was the principal of our school. And that's what got us going. So my brother Nate, and me, I was 12 years old. So we got in a car and drove to Baghdad. Then from there we took a train to Basra. Then from there we took a ship to Karachi. And then in those days Karachi was in India, not in Pakistan. Mm-hmm. And then eventually we disembarked in Bombay. And from Bombay we took the train to Calcutta. And from Calcutta we took another train up to Siliguri, which is a small town in the foothills of the Himalayas. And then we took on a narrow gauge railroad that took us up the mountain to the school. And our school was at an elevation of 7,600 feet. So there was very little snow, unfortunately, but in the distance, 40, 50 miles away, we could see the world's second tallest mountain.
Right.
Which is Mount Kanchenjunga. It's a beautiful mountain.
You have a picture of it in your book.
Yes.
You do.
Yeah. So my life then after that changed. I graduated from high school in Darjeeling, India. And I was accepted by Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo to study architectural engineering.
So I want to go back to that, Jay. So you were 12 years old when your parents decided to have you leave Iran and go to India to be educated. And your brother was 9 years old. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you remember any feelings or emotions that you had at the time? Did you know what was happening? Did you know how long you were going to leave?
Actually, neither one of us were informed as to what was going on in the minds of our parents.
Right.
Because many years later, friends would contact my parents and say, you made a big mistake sending your children away for such a long period of time. They will forget you. And I'm sure my mother and father didn't think that way.
Right.
And so what you see today is that we didn't forget our parents. In fact, we love them even more because we got an education out of it. We were able to come to America as a result of that education.
For the sacrifices that they had made.
There's no question about the sacrifice. I mean, what family in their right mind would send their young children away for 3 years at a time to get an education? And most people wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But my father, who
the late William,
he had a sense in him about good English-speaking country and a Christian religion as a basis for our growth.
Right.
And he was 5 and 6 years old when he thought of this. That's the amazing part of it. So that's been in his mind forever until he himself finally came to this country in 1958 with my sister Sonia, who was only 2 years old when we left it to go to India. So emotionally, it just tore the family apart. My grandmother and my mother, I'm sure, had long arguments with my dad, saying, "You can't do that to our children. They're going to have problems." And then it so happened that my brother Nate had malaria at the time of travel.
Right.
So I'm sure, and then my mother, who had studied nursing in the missionary school there, knew all the problems with malaria, and so she had to take his temperature on a regular basis, give him aspirins on a regular basis, and my father was probably not the medical type of a person, but he still did his job. So I think the sacrifice that my parents made was something that most people wouldn't do. Even today, you take a country like America, would you send your children from San Francisco to New York and let them stay there for 3 years and not visit them?
At the age of 12 and 9?
Yeah, at the ages of 12 and 9.
For 3 years and then see them once in 6 years, ultimately, yes.
So it was a tremendous sacrifice on their part to do what they did. I'm very grateful for that. And so the book that I wrote really woke up my feelings about family and genealogy. I had no interest in genealogy at all because I was studying architecture. And so eventually, after we got, let's see, this was in 1997, I think it was, I went to this class called MICL, M-I-C-L, Modesto Institute for Continued Learning. And what it was all retired people, and they all had different interests. So the curriculum that they designed was photography, travel, writing memoirs, bird watching, things like that. And so a friend of mine in the Presbyterian Church in Modesto said to me, "What are you doing these days in retirement?" I said, "Well, I'm in the process of trying to learn how to write my story, my life story." "Oh," he said, "you got to go to MICL." I said, "What's MICL?" And then he explained to me what they were. And then along with that, I also said, "Well, that's the beginning of it. What about the relationship of all the relatives and the children and all that? What am I a cousin to and how and so forth?" And that's where genealogy comes into play. So I joined the Stanislaus County Genealogical Society, and towards the end I was their treasurer. And so I learned an awful lot from both organizations. And then to write the book, Lisa said, "Dad, you should get yourself an editor, because that person will correct the grammar and fill in words and things that you have left out and so forth." I said, "Okay." So I've given credit to the people that helped me, and they're in the book, of course.
Yes, yes.
And so it was a real challenge for me to even, where do you start with a book like this? It's a big book. It's
Yes, it is.
530 pages.
Right.
But it's loaded with pictures.
It is.
And the pictures are dated, and the individuals in the pictures are identified.
Yes.
So it's not just a book for a coffee table.
Yes.
It's a book for study purposes.
To be read.
Yes, yeah. And so I think I was very fortunate that I met the right people, and John Williams was another one who, John Williams has passed away since, but he was an educator, and he was also a published author. Mm-hmm. And he was in one of the community colleges in the Bay Area.
Right.
He said, you know, well, you had such an exciting life getting to America. Why don't you write a book about it, you know? So that's what got me started. And I printed 200 copies, and I gave it all away to everybody. I said, nobody's going to buy this book because they don't know who's J. Mirza.
Yes.
Well, 6 months later, I get royalty checks coming in the mail.
Wow.
And I said, what's going on here? I mean, I'm not a Winston Churchill, you know. I'm not well known from that standpoint of view. And so they just kept coming for several years after that. I was amazed.
That's wonderful.
I've only written a little story about our family.
Yes.
But yet, when you go into the internet, you'll find so many stars against the people that have read it.
Yes.
And some of my people had four stars.
Really
said,
good
wow.
reviews. Really good reviews.
It surprised me.
Yes, it's
really
a wonderful book. It's a
Yeah.
it's a beautiful story of your family, and there's a novelette in there where your father has his story because he was also a writer and wrote. And I want to go back a little bit and talk about your late father, William, as we say in Assyrian, and your mother, Grace, which is, as you say, Gracie. They called her Gracie, your mum. So going back to their story and the vision that your dad had at the age of 5. Like you said, he had said in his book that I need to get out into a Christian country. And then ultimately when he got married to Grace, when they had their children, as you know, they sent you and your brother Nate to India. So going back to India, you were being educated there. Tell us a little bit about how you were starting to form as a young man, and then you said you got into Cal Poly. Tell us about that transition from you in India, graduating in high school, and then ultimately coming to California, Cal Poly as we know it.
Well, India was actually a shock to me, because when we left Iran, I spoke Assyrian, Farsi, and that's it. Those were the only two languages in here. Well, this was an English-speaking school, but they also offered classes in Hindi, in Urdu, which is the Pakistani language, and also in not Nepalese. Anyway, I forget the name. But anyway, there was five different languages were taught there, and so I selected. Well, English was the main language, and I selected French as a secondary language, and so it was very interesting because the thinking that the teacher portrayed to you about the French language were totally different than the way we grew up. So we had to be very careful what we did and what we said. And in fact, and then in the final exam, French was one of the subjects that I had to take. And I got a pass, which is like, they call it a credit in there. I got a pass. I was surprised that I had to write something in French. It was an article, and I forget what it was. But the transition from Iran to India, educationally wise, was really unique, because my grandmother only spoke Assyrian.
Gulistan.
So Julistan. So 3 years after we came home, we had forgotten Assyrian, we had forgotten Farsi, all we spoke was English. So it was a real challenge to communicate with my grandmother, who actually was a very bright lady.
Yes.
For all the decisions they made during all the exodus that they had in the First World War. And so she was highly respected by the people in the community she lived in, but she also knew the value of education. That's why she made sure that my father got his education through the school system, which was the Presbyterian mission schools. So he learned English over there. And without that English, he would have not been able to find a job in the oil company. And so eventually he had to leave. That, I'm digressing a little bit, but he had to leave the Urmi part of Iran and go to Abadan, which is the oil refinery and port for tankers. And so when he got there, he already spoke Farsi, he spoke English, and he spoke Assyrian, and he spoke some Turkish. So he was a natural person for the company to hire.
Right.
It got to the point where he was finally moved to Kermanshah, and in Kermanshah he became the executive assistant to the manager.
Right.
So all the letters that were ever written, Dad wrote all the letters for him.
Right.
So he got his experience in writing English in the oil company.
That's right.
So when he started to write about these stories that he has, it wasn't a fluke. It was in some ways it was a unique miracle.
Yes.
To be introduced to another language through having learned the language from some foreigners.
And he was aggressive about wanting to learn the language, English, correct? He really wanted to learn the language.
Yes.
That's what I learned from his reading in the book, that he wanted to get into the education system, and he found a way to get in, and and he taught himself, did a lot of study, and realized through the great help of a lot of his Assyrian teachers. One of them was Rabbi Esther, was it? Rabbi Esther?
Yeah, well, Rabbi Lucy and Rabbi Emma, those were the two Assyrian ladies who were the principals of two elementary schools in Kermanshah.
Right.
What would happen is that on Fridays, I think it was on Fridays, maybe Thursday afternoon, the weekend for the Muslim faith, the Iranian students would go to the mosque, and then the Christian students would be sent to a separate classroom to study the Assyrian language.
Right.
And so they found a way for Muslims and Christians to get along together, and at the school level.
Right.
But what happened later, of course, this is another story, you know.
Right.
But getting back to the school, St. Paul's. St. Paul's was an English boarding school, and it was run very much like a military academy. Everything was done by the numbers. The bell would ring at 6 o'clock in the morning to wake you up. And then we would go to the physical training and the play field to do exercises. Then we'd come in and have breakfast. And then you go to class. So the mornings were devoted to education and learning. The afternoons were all sports.
Right.
We played soccer, we played cricket. we played ground hockey, which is the crooked stick, you know, and then we had gymnasium classes, and we got a very well-rounded education. We slept in the dormitories. We had ladies that would take care of all of our clothes, make sure we took a bath, and they were like, I forget the name of them. I don't want to call them maids, but they were ladies that took care of young children, you know, because the instructors were not interested in what I wore, stuff like that, you know.
Right.
So, and then the principal, Leslie Goddard, had gone to divinity school in England. And he was a very good preacher. And on Sundays, the students all took part in the service. We used to read from the Bible and listen to lectures and sermons given by Mr. Goddard. So we got I would say, a very rounded education. And based on that, the degree that I got, I was accepted to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. And I had no idea what I was going to do when I was in St. Paul, in India. And so my father and when I would do most of the writing, we had to write a letter home every week.
Right.
And they got a letter response back every week. So he would say, what would you like to study when you're a grown-up kid? I said, I don't know. So he said, the next letter would say, as an example, what do you enjoy doing? I said, well, I like to draw, I like to take photographs, I like music. And then he would come back and say, what about architecture? I said, what's architecture? The school system was not like the American system where in America they will advise you to go to take these classes to go to such and such university. Over there was no such thing at all.
I see.
And so everything was left pretty much so to the family to make a decision. And so I had built a model of our chapel, a cardboard model. I think that was the one that finally set
got the wheels turning.
Yes. And so when I came to America to go to San Luis Obispo, I found out that the school the major that I was going to school for was called architectural engineering, and I was terrible in math in India, and so I just had to learn with the other students that actually helped me, which was wonderful. But I did get a degree in architectural engineering, and that was very useful because in the architectural profession, you're dealing with structural engineers, with civil engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers who do heating, air conditioning, and plumbing, and even sometimes landscape architects.
Right.
So you have to understand all of these systems that are in this building, and you have to know who they are, how to contact them, and get things done.
Right.
So by learning, in fact, they call their method of education learn by doing.
Right.
We would actually build small structures and show them. Once a year we had a sort of like a special invitation for parents called Poly Royal. The parents would come to the school and see what their children had done during the past year, which is a wonderful way to show where your money was going. You know? And so I learned so much about the buildings as a result of association with all these different organizations that when I finally came to Sacramento, we got married in 1959, and next year the family moved from Turlock to Sacramento. I could speak to those principals of those companies in a way as if I knew what they were doing. So I learned an awful lot at Cal Poly. It was a very good school.
That's
so
wonderful.
The learn by doing principle is still very prevalent over there.
Yes. And you took that motto on for yourself?
I'm sorry?
Did you take that motto on for yourself, the learn by doing, in life?
Well, I think so. I mean, I'll show you some examples of my writings here. I'll tackle a problem, I'll research it, I'll write it, I'll photograph it, and I'll put it into book form.
Okay.
And so I only brought you a few examples. I've not written any other books except for the Presbyterian Church in Turlock. They were having a 90th anniversary of the founding of the church. So when I went there, I didn't see any cameras, or I didn't see any reporters, from Modesto or Turlock. I said, well, I'm going to approach the pastor's son when the church was open, Milton David, Dr. Milton David, and the current pastor. And so I said, would you gentlemen mind if I take on this honor of putting together a book that shows the history of this church?
Yes.
They said, no, we'd love that.
Yes.
So I wound
Please
up with
share.
this book in here, which shows the life of all the pastors that served that church.
Yeah.
And
A glorious anniversary.
Yeah,
so you put that book together?
I put it together. I'm not the author of the book. I'm the compiler of the book.
The compiler.
I had to go to the families of those 6 pastors that served the church all those years.
Wow.
Contact them about photographs.
Wow.
So, and then on top of that, when our families would go on vacations, I would write a story of the trips that we made.
Right, the Murdoch family's first American history trip.
Right.
In 2012.
Yeah, and it's full of photographs and
how precious.
The drawings of the children's drawings too.
Oh, how precious.
Yeah.
Can I just have a look at that for
Sure.
a second? So I just want to share the memorabilia that you have. I saw those pictures of the children, just little trinkets here. Oh my. This is so special.
Yeah.
This is really special.
What the mother, Allison, my younger daughter, she told the children, I want you, at the end of each day, I want you to write what you did and what you saw.
Yes.
So Matthew drew pictures.
Wow.
And then his twin sister actually had words.
Right.
So it was a little different. But anyway, the part of this is really genealogy.
Yeah, it really is.
What the family
and they have that memory for life.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So that's what you're doing with yourself these days? What are you doing with yourself these days, Jay?
What was that?
How are you keeping yourself busy these days? How are you keeping busy?
Oh, well, my interest is still architectural. Mm-hmm. So for the last 5 years, I've been working at the First Presbyterian Church in Turlock with 2 other gentlemen, Dan Hardesty and Manuel Vasquez, and we formed ourselves a little company called the Three Amigos. And so we designed and built an audiovisual center in the church. Mm-hmm. We put a Wi-Fi system in all the buildings on the campus. Mm-hmm. We put cameras to security reasons throughout the campus.
Yes.
And we've changed all the light bulbs have been changed in the church. From the old styles to the new ones, which last you thousands of hours.
Yes.
So I've been keeping busy with that, but on top of that, every time we go on a trip somewhere, I document everything in that trip.
Wow.
And that becomes a future book for my grandchildren to read.
Really beautiful memories, and they get to keep those, like we said. That's wonderful, Jay. You're setting a good I want to say example for them, so that they can also keep those memories for their children and grandchildren. And
the other thing that I've done is I've introduced a lot of my friends here to Assyrian food.
Oh, wonderful.
And we got 2 or 3 restaurants in Turlock, so we'll go out there and have some dolman ruza and some khurush, you know.
What's your favorite Assyrian food?
Oh, dolman ruza.
Dolman ruza. Dolmet kalame, like cabbage?
Well, actually, I like tomatoes, and then khurush and ruza with that.
Okay, wonderful.
And then barbecued chicken and all that stuff.
And you have to have your chai after every meal?
Of course. So anyway, my life has been very saddened when Jeanette got cancer. And
Jeanette is your late wife?
My late wife, yes. Mm-hmm. She had. We were in Sacramento for 35 years, and she raised a family. She worked hard. She had a job too, and she was a wonderful hostess, a good cook, and then unfortunately she was struck with cancer. Right. And when we moved to Turlock, then there was another form of cancer came on. So she finally passed away in 2003. And so she's been a huge loss in our lives because my daughters were trained by their mother to do what they do, and they're doing a very good job. But it's very sad to lose a mate that you've lived with for 44 years.
No doubt, no doubt.
but I still life is left in me. I recently had a heart operation.
I know, you were just telling me about that.
I survived that, and so it's been a real challenge for me to live without your wife, because all the decisions were made on a basis of both of us talking about it.
Right.
Now I look at the walls, they don't tell me what to do. So I have to ask questions of my daughters or friends as to the wisdom of what I want to do, you know.
Well, tell us about where you met Jeanette. Let's go back to that. Where did you meet her?
This was in 1954 when I first came to America.
Right.
I went to the Assyrian Presbyterian Church, the book we just looked at.
Yes.
And the choir was up about 4 feet above the rest of the congregation. It was a small choir, like maybe 12 people. And I saw this lady dressed in this beautiful yellow dress. I mean, it was so bright I couldn't hardly stand it, you know. And so afterwards we met, and she introduced herself to me, and so it all started in church. And so, and then in the summertime, we would do projects together, travel to San Francisco, buy some shoes, come back to Toronto.
Yes, I read that.
She loved shoes.
Yeah.
You know.
Imelda, you called her Imelda?
Imelda, yeah. She had about 40, 50 pairs of shoes.
Yes.
Every time we went to a party, she said, well, I don't have shoes to go with this dress. I said, hey, there's 60 pairs over there. Why not? So anyway, life has been good for me. God has been good to us.
Thank God, yeah.
I was delighted that you called me and said, can we do a little interview?
Yes.
I said, sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll be able to get some of this information on a flash drive or something
yes,
like that.
You will, I'm sure.
And I could maybe have a program here
sure.
for people what we talk about, you know.
So going back to your book, I researched myself, and I was actually looking for Assyrian biographies or autobiographies, and I came across your book, and I really wanted to learn more about you and your family, and I thought it was something that was very intriguing, and the reviews on it were very good, as we talked about earlier. And as I was reading your story, you suggested that I go to your dad's portion of the book, which is a little novelette within your book. A book within a book almost. And I do want to go back a little bit and talk about your father, what I read about his experience, even your grandma, Julius W, as we talked about, and the heartache and the hardships and the sacrifices. I don't want to harp on it too much because I know it's probably a little challenging and difficult, but there was really a lot of heartache and challenges. Eventually it was just your grandma and your dad that had survived, from my reading, and how they survived together, mother and son, and got through the challenges of Raka Qamaya, as we say, and the first Exodus and the second Exodus, and then the third Exodus, and the horrific, the atrocities that the Assyrians went through, our people, that's who we are. And I know that you said that your dad, I asked you if your dad or your father William had ever spoken about his time, but go ahead, tell the audience what you had said.
Dad actually did a very good job of writing his life story, which is part of the book, is his life story.
Yes, yes.
And he explained his childhood days.
In detail, very in detail.
And also the difficulties that they had during the Three Rache.
Yeah.
And it's hard to imagine, like he was 14 years old for the first Racha.
Yes.
And having to lift all these heavy sacks of food and on top
flour,
on top of the donkey. It took 3 people to lift those up on the donkey.
Right.
And so in the flight, which was the third flight, he lost his mother because he was looking for a cow.
The cow.
One of their cows.
Yes.
And who would think of taking a cow on an exodus someplace,
yes.
you know?
Yes.
But anyway, Dad thought that he was a very dumb student because the teacher would beat him up with a stick if he made a mistake.
Right.
And so he was afraid of school. But then when they went to Hamadan, this is after the third Raqqa, he ran into a wonderful lady, and she brought out of him the fact that he was not brilliant, but he was the second in line as far as their classroom goes. And so I think this gave him a lot of confidence in himself that he didn't have before.
Right.
And I think that his experience with this teacher brought out the best he could say for himself, you know.
Right. And do you mind if I quote that from his book?
No.
Yeah, I'm just going to go in here. On page 301, your dad writes here, as a result of my bitter experience in the school, I thought I was a dull student. Otherwise, why all those beatings? Many years later, when I attended school as a refugee, I approached it with the same fears. All the teachers were women, and all of them as kind as mothers can be. Rabbi Istir Alam Shah, the principal in Hamadan, was, in my opinion, the greatest Assyrian lady that I had known in Iran. It didn't take long before I realized that I was not only dull, but was also, in fact, a bright student. School became a source of joy and not terror. I studied at the American Presbyterian missionary schools in Hamadan, Tabriz, Urmi, later called Rezaieh, and back to Tabriz. Among my 80 classmates, I was number 2 in my class. I was not brilliant, but bright and studious. My only regret is that I never had the opportunity to attend a university. But I do have the satisfaction of giving my children, which is you, Jay, a higher education than mine. They all went to college.
I think this shows how determined he was to get out of Iran, get his children educated, send them to a Christian country that spoke English. That was his goal. But to have that goal at age 5 and 6, to me, is almost unheard of.
Yes,
I mean, children at that age don't talk about things like that. You know?
Yes.
But his dream finally came true. He and my sister came to this country in 1958.
Sonia.
And he had a whole new life to start.
Yeah.
It was a fascinating life because after a while he got a little tired of playing nartakhta and drinking tea all the time. And so his doctor asked him one day, he said, can you run this dry cleaning concern that I bought? Dad said, well, I don't know anything about it, but if you're willing to send me to school and pay my room and board, I'll learn and I'll come back and we'll open the business.
That's right.
And sure enough, I drove him to Los Angeles, found him a motel, and he studied for 3 months, got his license. We drove him back to Modesto, and that got him interested in business again.
Yes.
And so one day he said, I'm going to go buy a restaurant. I said, restaurant? You have no experience in a restaurant.
Yes.
He said, oh, I'll use my common sense and we'll run it. Grace and I will run it. Well, what we didn't know was that it was open 24 hours a day. And it was in Newman, California. It was a small community west of Turlock.
Yes.
And the employees not showing up on time for work, theft of food, drunken people coming in at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was a very difficult lifestyle.
And you ended up working in some of these restaurants.
On Friday nights after work, Jeanette and I would drive over there and help them with the, cleaning the tables, or cashier, or anything like me.
Yes.
So it was quite a new charge in their lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, tell us about William, your late father, and his arrival into the U.S.
Yeah, he. My mother actually came before him.
Uh-huh.
And she was sponsored by her half-sister, Mabel Sayed.
Yes.
Mabel and her mother, Victoria, came to this country in 1919, I believe.
Okay.
And so she was never married, but she was willing to sponsor her half-sister to come to America.
Okay.
So my mother arrived in 1956 in New York, and eventually moved to Chicago to be with her niece, Helen Joseph. And but unfortunately, I graduated in 1957, and my father and my sister were still in the old country, and so they were so disappointed that they could not be there to see their son graduate from college.
Yes.
You know? So that was a big milestone in our family. Dad says he missed going to the university. I wish he had gone to a university. Well, he made sure his sons went to university. You
Yes.
know? So that was a.
But there is a photo in the book with you and your mom and your brother on your graduation day, right? Yeah,
right.
that's a lovely photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so but even for my mother, Grace, life was so different in America.
Of course.
She had to learn to adapt.
Oh.
And his story clearly shows what happens in their lives.
Right.
And when the 10 o'clock shift, they call it the graveyard shift, when the cook didn't show up, who do you think had to go and
Grace.
cook? Grace and William.
Grace and William.
It was
Yeah.
it was a very difficult life for them.
Right.
But they still loved America.
So much that it was worth it for them.
Definitely.
Yes.
And then Daddy would help the newcomers, Assyrians, to teach them English.
Right.
It took them to the DMV, got them help with their licenses, to get
Yes.
their licenses.
Right.
And did their income tax for them.
Yes.
I mean, he even had a job working as a security guard in a parking garage in Modesto.
Right.
So he's done everything.
He's done everything.
And you couldn't settle him down because he was just planning ahead.
He was always busy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was a busy
And
man.
He said at the end of his life, he said that had I come to America 30 or 40 years ago, I would have been a millionaire.
Yes, he
Yeah,
did
and I
say that.
believe it. I believe that.
Because it's a land of opportunity.
Exactly.
So many opportunities. Yes. And no doubt your father, this was his dream, so I'm sure he was very happy with the dream that came to fruition for his family, and ultimately his sons and daughter were graduated from colleges, and that also came to fruition. And I'm no doubt he was a very, very happy man when he was in the US.
That's true.
Yeah, no, I could tell through his writings. I just loved reading his story.
Yeah.
I loved reading your story. It's a beautiful family story. And the challenges and the sacrifices, and ultimately all worth it. Because we know that you and your two siblings, Nate and Sonia, are in the US, and everyone is successful thanks to the hard work, not only that they put in, but the sacrifices that your parents put in, William and Grace. So tribute to them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's we haven't talked about my brother.
Yes.
My brother Nate joined an organization called the Navigators. It's a non-denominational Christian organization, and so he followed his grandfathers. My great grandfather was a minister in Assyrian church.
Right.
And my mother's father was also a minister.
Right.
And then so my brother Nate followed in their footsteps in the missionary field. So he also chose a very welcome profession that was close to his heart.
Yes.
You know, and of course he's still living today. He's 3 years younger than I am.
Wonderful.
And he just recently came back from Australia, as a matter of fact.
Wonderful.
He took his wife to a cricket game.
Oh, wow.
And she had never seen cricket in her life,
Wow.
so she was fascinated by it.
And I'm sure that Nate played plenty of cricket in India.
Yeah. Well, I was a pitcher,
Okay.
and I was a bowler.
A bowler,
and he
yeah.
was the one of the outfielders. I forget. He was a batsman.
Right.
But even that game has changed a lot over the
Yes,
years. You know.
no doubt. So they watched cricket in Australia. How exciting.
Yeah.
Cricket is a sport for anyone that does not know.
And I don't know if he went to that. There's an Assyrian community outside of Sydney. I believe it's 40, 50 miles away. It's a town. There's a lot of Assyrians that live over there. Are you familiar with that?
No,
I don't know
not
either.
sure. I know there is a town within
Yeah,
Sydney. There's a lot of
But
Assyrians.
to stop the game to have tea, that's typically British.
Tea and scones.
Yeah.
And what about your sister, Sonia?
Well, she also initially went to high school in Uristimba High School in Newman, California.
Okay.
And she graduated from there, and then she went to the Modesto Junior College, and she got her degree in, I forget what it was. But anyway, eventually she wound up being a statistician working for the federal government.
Right.
Outside of Tracy, there's a military base over there. And she was a huge contributor to me for the information about relatives.
You're right.
Because she and her mom were a lot closer than we were in Sacramento, and she was in Stockton. So she would either get her on the phone and get information from her, or come over here and visit and get information.
Right.
So a lot of that information is in this book.
Yes, it is.
You know, it's,
This book.
so it's to me, it's now I look back at that book. To me, now it's a reference book for the grandchildren,
Yes.
because they can see what their
Ancestors.
yeah, what was going on.
Yes, exactly.
And being an architect, I have to do things in an order. You can't just fall into something. You have to think about it, you know.
Right.
And so that's why I collected all those pictures over the years. And
That's
then
incredible.
Put them in, and a lot of them are black and white.
Yes.
You know. Well, of course, the whole book is black and white.
Yes.
However, the pictures when I first came here to America were all black and white.
Yes.
And so I was able to transfer them into a medium that would work in the book.
Yes, and
And so I worked very hard on this book. It took me about 4 or 5 years to get it organized.
I can tell it's all chronological. The photos are beautiful. It really made the book come to life for me, and I've mentioned that to you. I could put a face to the names, because we're talking about names back in the early 1900s. You've got a photo on the cover here from 1947. You have older photos than this even in your book. And the photo, which we'll post up, but the photo is the Mirza family in 1947 in Kermanshah, Iran. And I know you've got childhood photos of yourself. So to keep those photos, even to have a camera back then, so to keep those beautiful memories and then to keep them alive and to appreciate what we have today.
Well, my brother and sister have often asked me, how did you remember all this stuff to put it down? You know?
Yes.
I said, I don't know. It just came to me and I put it down.
Yes.
And I still have black and white pictures that are not cataloged.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And I did think the same thing. How could you remember all those names? And like going back to your school principal, and when you were 12 years old, I have no memory of my principal's name, but you, the principals, the teachers, and it's a wonderful memory, wonderful memory.
I've been back to my school in India 3 times.
Yes, I saw those photos.
And,
yes.
You have an opportunity to remember your best friends, and they showed up too.
Yes.
You know?
Wow.
And so it's a wonderful feeling to go back to where you were educated, especially when you were that young.
Right. Right.
But so anyway, it's been a pleasure writing about our family, and I even have the names of the friends that we had in those cities that were not that related to us, we're just friends.
Yes, I saw that.
So I got their names, their children's names.
Yes.
And so I remember when I was doing it, I think Lisa said, Dad, what are you putting all this stuff in the book for? I said, well, one day
Yes.
it's going to come in handy. You know?
And you'll thank me.
Yeah, my family. But
Yeah.
there's so much information in this book, especially
Really?
about Dad's personal life.
Yes.
That it's just fascinating.
It really is.
And
It really
I had
is.
I have to share this with you.
Please.
One of the Carol Allen, she's a friend that lives in this building. She wanted to read my book, so I said, read it. Well, this is the note that she sent me after she read it. She said, "Thank you for sharing your story. What a life you have lived. Makes me realize even more how blessed I have been to live in America. So glad you made it to America and the covenant living. Love, Carol."
Oh, that's wonderful. That's really nice.
Yeah, I saved it because it was an important piece of paper.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. Someone really appreciates. And I do too, Jay. I must say that I am also grateful that I had the opportunity to read your book. And
most people have no concept of what life was like in the Middle East 50, 100, 150 years ago. Even though they had their difficulties in America, they were able to sustain themselves through that period, especially the big recession, 1929, 30 recession. And it took a war in order to get the country back on its feet again.
Right.
And the country finally got back, 46, 47 got back. So it was about 8 years of it was a very difficult time.
Very difficult time, yes. And then when you think about the Assyrians and the 3 exoduses, every time they left, they come back, they would have to start all over again. They literally start with nothing because the looters were waiting for them to leave so they can take everything that they had. They'd lose a lot of things on the way out through the Exodus and come back and start all over again. And for some families like your dad, at least 3 times that had to happen. The late William, I really, really enjoyed reading his story. That's the first time I've actually read a first-hand story of the Assyrian exoduses. I've read of them, but that was the first time I had so much detail about what his eyes had seen, what his mother had seen, what they had felt, and the family along the way and the decisions that had to be made along the way while seeing so many, sadly, dead people along the way out of the Exodus. And they had to make decisions as they were moving out of the city, out of the villages more than once, twice. What are we going to eat for the next week? What are we going to drink? No drink, dehydration. In the summer, the heat of the summer, no shoes. No, it's just so many things that we just take for granted. And yes, a horrible time, but thanks to your dad's bright thinking from the age of 5 and wanting to get out and coming to America, we see the result, the goodness of all that. The heartache did bring some good results. Yes.
Yeah, it's all of us have been through all these travails.
Yes.
I mean, just getting my passport ready to be acceptable by American authorities, that drove me crazy. Because they said that the regulations were that our passport had to be valid for 1 or 2 years after the expiration date of a visa. And I didn't know what they were talking about.
Right.
So I had to go from Leeds to Manchester in England to find out what to do. And at the time, the diplomatic relations between Iran and England were very sour. And so they closed their embassy in London. So I had to send my passport to the Swedish embassy in London, who in turn sent it to the Iranian embassy in Stockholm. And I had to wait for it to be corrected, come back. And then it just so happened, I got back my corrected visa about a week before the ship left to come to America. So I was very lucky from that
Just
point.
in time.
Yeah, just in time. But all of this, I was only 18 years old then. And so you have no idea what's going on in the world.
Yes.
At least not
Yes.
at that age, you know.
Yes, I know.
And I have never lived in Europe or America, and so to be confronted with all these difficulties is just maddening.
Yes.
You say, why me?
But you did. You conquered them all.
Yes.
And you did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, now more about, let's focus on Jay now. So you were born, where were you born?
Well, I was born in Chirmanshaw, and well, in fact, the whole family, my brother and sister were also born in Chirmanshaw, and we were all delivered by different doctors in the Presbyterian Mission hospital over there, and it was unique because my father had a job in the oil company complex, and the houses were built by the British just like they would be built in England.
Right. Oh, okay. Yes.
But the houses in Chirmanshaw were totally different. They were straw and mud and some brick and all that. And so the British that were running that oil compound were living as if they were in England, transported to Iran. Right. But in our case, it was something brand new, and to make a senior level employee in the oil company meant so much in the way of benefits that you got. Right. You got to use the swimming pool. Yes. You got to use the clubhouse and their club that they had. You could go to the store that sold no groceries but hard goods, you know. Right. And so my parents became exposed to a lifestyle which was so far advanced to where they were living that they just dreamed about the day they'd be able to go to America or Australia or Canada. Yes. Well, Canada wouldn't have us because we had no experience to build our country. Yes. There was nobody there. Australia said, you're Asiatics, we don't take Asiatics. And America said, well, we'll take 100 people a year. We'll take you. We'll have a quota. And how long would it take to get here? Oh, 10 to 15 years. So you can imagine the disruption in the life of the family, because then this is what precipitated our need to be educated elsewhere instead of Iran. Right. And that's, we wound up going to India, and the sacrifice that my parents suffered was terrible. It was a heartache, no doubt. I cannot imagine, but obviously you reaping everything, the heartache that your dad and the sacrifices that they made. So I guess thank you to William and Grace and your Liston for their hard work, for getting you to where you are today. Yeah. No doubt you played a big role in that as well, obviously, but their goal was to get you here, and they did. Yes. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's so fascinating to think about how people's lives were changed by the country they moved to. It really makes a big difference. Yes. And so I feel so fortunate that my parents had the foresight to send us to a good school, a British boarding school, even though it was run like a military academy, in my opinion. Right. But it was good, because as a child you need to be well disciplined as you grow up. And so when my daughters were growing up, I'd have an inspection on every Saturday morning. I'd say, we're going to start under your beds first. And if those clothes were soiled and they were not in the laundry room, you didn't go out. Dad, you're so cruel. I said, no. You know exactly what to do with your clothes. When you take them off, they're soiled, you go to the laundry room and you keep them there. Yes. So discipline means so much for children. Yes. And the younger you are with the discipline, the better off you are, because at age 15 and 16, they won't rebel against you. Yes, I agree. Okay. So life is a learning process for all of us, even today. Learn by doing. Yeah, I'm still learning everything that I'm doing today. Yeah, that's wonderful. I don't know much about computers, I don't know much about telephones, but I struggle with them. Yes. With that, I was able to put these books together. Yeah, you did great. You did great. You know, so.
I'm just going to. So Jay, tell us what your most memorable moment was in your life.
Well, one of them would be the interest that the teachers took in me as I was growing up in India. And Mr. Pratul Ray was my photography instructor. Jack Warren was our housemaster, and he's the one that was interested in cricket. And then, of course, Malcolm Alloy, he taught geography. And I remember those three gentlemen clearly, like they were sitting in the room here. I remember him telling that the climate of California is warm, wet winters, hot, dry summers. I still remember that. That was his explanation of California climate.
Yes.
And so I've been struck. And then the Pratul Ray was the photography expert. He taught me composition. He taught me how to print, and black and white pictures, And Jack Warren was a sports enthusiast. So I remember those gentlemen, they had a lot to do with the way I was brought up.
Right.
And in America, I thought about my parents in Iran. Look what they've done for me, what sacrifices they made to see their children grow up.
Right.
And then my dad, of course, he taught me how to play many things, including backgammon. And he would ask me to come and stand behind him while he was playing backgammon and watch the moves that he made,
Yeah.
So that later on in life, I remember when he was almost blind, I would drive down from Sacramento and have dinner with him. He would actually, his memory was so good that he knew the grocery store where everything was on what shelf.
Wow.
We would go buy this stuff, then he would cook the meal for us. And after meal, he said, okay, it's time for dessert, and the ice cream and whatever, fruit. And then he said, all right, techta, and he loved to play backgammon. He was very good at it, So I'm teaching that right now to my friends over here.
Oh, good.
How to play backgammon.
I saw that.
Yeah. So there's some things that stick with you all your life, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. And my mother, of course, she made sure that we were always clean with our clothes, our appearance, and I think you could see from the clothes that they were wearing in 1946 that
wow.
they were current.
Yes.
And one of the reasons for that, I think, was the fact that the mission the missionaries had Sears catalogs, and you could order clothing through the Sears catalogs from over there too.
Wow.
So they would order clothes, and if they didn't fit, they have some seamstress go through and kind of change the clothing and make them fit. But they wore current, modern clothing with that period of time.
Wow.
Those things that I remember with my mom. She always dressed us well, and she cared for us a lot.
That's what mamas do. So what a lovely story, Jay. It's been an absolute pleasure to finally get to meet you. We've been corresponding now for a while.
Well, thank you. I'm the remains of what's left of the Mirza
family.
The
Mirza family.
I'm the oldest.
Yes. What a pleasure it was for me to get to meet you and learn your story, not just through your book, but the story came to life. Now I get to meet the person that lived that story. So thank you so much for your time. I will ask that you sign my book. And then, and I want to say thank you once again. And also, we want to say thank you to all of our viewers for watching another exciting episode on AGN. And thank you to Nabi Fry, Fun for Culture, for allowing us to get to know more Assyrian writers and authors through this program. Thank you so much.